All right, let's get right into it. We're going to explore how one single military strike triggered a massive multi-year shockwave through the global energy market. It's a move that literally changed the fortunes of entire industries and nations, pretty much overnight.
And this is the flashpoint, a specific action on a specific day, a tactical strike on this small island in the Persian Gulf. But this wasn't just any island. This single action set off a chain reaction that market analysts and investors are going to be studying for decades.
And this number, this is the immediate fallout. 3 million. That's how many barrels of oil per day of production capacity might have just been, poof, wiped off the global market. In a world that runs on about 100 million barrels a day, taking out 3 million is, well, it's a seismic event. So what makes this one little island so important? Well, because it's not just a piece of land. For Iran, and really for the whole global oil supply, Kharg Island is the heart of the entire operation. It's the main artery for the country's economic lifeblood. And this right here, this shows you just how incredibly vulnerable the whole setup was. 90%. Just think about that for a second. 9 out of every 10 barrels of oil that Iran sells to the world has to pass through this one single spot. It's the ultimate choke point. There is no plan B.
And this is such a crucial point. Kharg Island isn't some simple dock you can just rebuild in a few months. No way. We're talking about a highly specialized, custom-built industrial complex. It's got submarine pipelines, massive farms of storage tanks, special mooring systems for supertankers. Some of this stuff dates all the way back to the 1960s.
You see, getting this back online isn't just about money or willpower, it's about global capacity. The specialized marine engineering firms you need for this kind of rebuild, they're booked solid for the next 3 to 5 years. Just rebuilding the storage tanks alone is an 18-month job. Realistically, a full restoration could take half a decade, if it ever happens at all. Okay, so let's zoom out to the global picture. Because the destruction of Kharg didn't happen in a vacuum. It slammed into a market that was already fragile, creating not just a temporary price spike, but a deep, structural, and long-term supply shortage. Now, you might be thinking, hang on, wasn't Iranian oil already under sanctions? And you're right, it was. But that's where this shadow fleet comes into play. It's this whole network of tankers that kept Iranian crude flowing to buyers, especially in Asia. The market knew about the supply and had already kind of priced it into the equation. And just like that, nearly 2 million barrels a day of real physical supply just vanished from the market. In a global economy that was already tight on supply, this isn't a minor hiccup. It's a catastrophic loss. Sure, strategic reserves can patch the hole for a little while, but they're like a Band-Aid on a gaping wound. They can't fix a multi-year deficit this big. All right, so with a market shock of this magnitude, you know there are going to be massive winners and losers. And this is where the strike fundamentally rewrote the playbook for investors and completely changed company valuations across the entire energy sector. So who's popping the champagne? Well, look no further than American shale producers. For investors holding stock in these companies, the attack on Kharg Island was like hitting the lottery. Suddenly, the long-term price outlook for oil flipped dramatically in their favor. And this chart, it lays out exactly why. At a sustained oil price of over $80 a barrel, every major U.S. shale region becomes wildly profitable. You get up over $100, and companies in the Permian and Eagle Ford aren't just making money, they are literally printing it. For an investor, this signals a gusher of free cash flow, huge dividends, and soaring stock valuations for years to come. And of course, the impact ripples out everywhere. On one side, you have the winners, nations like Saudi Arabia and Russia, who can now sell their oil for much higher prices. Sector-wise, U.S. shale and LNG become absolutely critical to global supply. But the losers are just as clear. China lost its cheapest oil supplier, and its manufacturing sector is now facing crushing costs. And of course, the broader global economy has to deal with stubborn, sustained inflation. And let's not forget another huge winner in all of this, Russia. With prices staying this high, some estimates suggest this single event could funnel over $100 billion in extra revenue right into Moscow's coffers, money that directly funds its war efforts. And listen, this isn't just about what you're paying at the pump. Projections like this one from the IMF show that high energy costs act like a giant brake on the entire global economy. For investors, this creates a deeply bearish outlook for pretty much every sector, except for those energy producers who are reaping all the benefits.
So this brings us to the central irony, the big paradox of the whole operation. The strike was, by all accounts, a tactical success, but it created this cascade of unintended consequences that may have completely undermined its own strategic goals. And this flowchart here breaks down the self-defeating logic perfectly. Step 1, strike Iran to cut their revenue. Makes sense. But step 2, that action shrinks the global oil supply, which leads to step 3, global prices skyrocket. And who benefits the most from that price spike? Step 4, you end up handing a massive financial windfall to your other adversary, Russia.
And this is the bottom line, really. When you put the goals side by side with the actual outcomes, the contradiction is just staggering. The goal was to do two things at once: weaken Iran and sanction Russia. But the outcome made those goals mutually exclusive. You ended up weakening Iran, but at the direct cost of strengthening Russia. The math just doesn't add up.
So, what's the final verdict here? When we step back and look at the long-term fallout, what we're really seeing is a textbook case of a tactical victory that may have paved the way for a much, much larger strategic failure.
So let's just quickly recap the new reality. 1. The world is now facing a long-term oil supply deficit. That's locked in. 2. Russia is financially stronger, helping to fund its military campaigns. 3. Key U.S. allies in Asia are getting squeezed by sky-high energy costs. And 4, ironically, the country most likely to step in and rebuild Iran's oil sector is now China, which could give Beijing huge influence over the very market the strike was meant to shape.
I think this quote from the source material really just says it all, doesn't it? The strike hit its target, it achieved its immediate military goal. But in doing so, it may have created a far more unstable and challenging economic and geopolitical world for everyone else for years to come. When you strip everything else away, the politics, the strategy, this is the cold, hard math we're left with. The world has a relentless thirst for energy. That's the demand. And on the other side of the equation, the supply just took a massive long-term hit. That simple imbalance will define the market for the foreseeable future. And that leaves us with this one final provocative question. In a world this interconnected, where a single strike can rewrite global economics, is it time to start thinking differently about how these decisions are made?